Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to talk about some news that has come out of Paramount Studios about the Transformers franchise. And this is actually some kind of encouraging news, which is a bit more than what we've had as of late. Um, Now, we all kind of know that Michael Bay's Transformers films are kind of done. They kind of trailed off after the last night. They had significantly more decreasing revenue over the course of the series, and they were more negatively received over the course of the series. Um, but now it appears that Paramount's kind of going in different directions, kind of experimenting with spin-offs, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually probably a very good thing when it comes to trying to keep this franchise going. Because kind of the narrative that Bay left behind, I don't think really could have been continued anymore. But now it appears there are two Transformers films that are in production over at Paramount, and keep in mind these have not been confirmed, so this is just kind of well-informed rumor, I guess. But many people have already supposed this, and according to some insiders, it might be the case. And to be honest, this is actually probably very likely too. Now, the first one isn't anything out of the ordinary. It's kind of what we expected, and that's a sequel to the Bumblebee standalone film that came out last year. Um, and really, that first one it was a breath of fresh air in the Transformers franchise. It was something that wasn't Michael Bay. It was something that actually had a halfway decent story. It wasn't just special effects of the movie. So it's not really surprising that they greenlit a sequel. Hopefully they get a little bit bigger, a little bit better, maybe add in some other mainstay Transformers. But the other one is far more interesting to me, both from a nostalgic standpoint and from an adaptation standpoint, and that is a film adaptation of the Transformers show Beast Wars. Now, for those kids that grew up in the '90s, you probably remember Beast Wars very fondly, especially if you were a Transformers fan. That was one of the best series that I remember from when I was a kid in terms of the writing, and in terms of the story structure and the episodes. I think it went on for 4 seasons, if I remember correctly, maybe 5. Um, but ultimately, the series was really, really good. And I think one of the things that made it really, really good for me is there wasn't a lot of human characters to kind of muddy the waters, so to speak. That's one of the things I've always kind of disliked about the Transformers franchise to a point is the human characters. It's like I'm interested in seeing these kind of sentient machines interact with one another and talk with one another and ultimately wage war with one another, but I'm not really overly interested in, the regular kind of human characters that sort of tag along and they make them a big deal, but in reality they're not. It's always kind of annoyed me both in the series and in the films. Although the first film, I think you kind of needed it because you had to establish everything. But after that, I think they should have gone away from it if they couldn't make it, that well. And that's the thing that Beast Wars did is they basically there were no humans around in the actual show, so it was just the robots, and it worked. It worked extremely well. They didn't shy away from things. They had character death. They had love interests, and people had relationships and things. There was actual, there was actual stuff going on there. As opposed to just kind of your standard kid show, which again is kind of what the original did too. The original was it was very much a children's show. You could very much tell that. The movie kind of upped that a little bit because they had a lot of character death in the movie. But the old cartoon, I think, was very two-dimensional, but not necessarily in a bad way, because it was the first of its kind. Beast Wars made all those things three-dimensional, and the best thing is it didn't touch upon that original timeline, that original Transformers show. It stepped away from it. It went completely off the rails in terms of where it was in the Transformers timeline, because I think it's supposed to take place well after the original series, but it takes place on the same Earth. Now, this is the fun thing about Beast Wars, if you haven't seen it, and I'm just going to give a very basic premise, is that basically the Autobots and the Decepticons have been replaced by the Maximals and the Predacons. Um, And the Maximals are basically they're all mammal. Most of them, maybe there's a couple of exceptions, but most of them are mammal-based animals. Because in this, instead of transforming into vehicles, the Transformers transform into various animals. So a lot of them are mammals, a gorilla, a cheetah, a rhino, a rat. They're all furry animals, mammals. Whereas the Predacons oftentimes are lizards or insects. Um, there's a bee, a scorpion, a T Rex, a pterodactyl. So there was a lot of there was the different. It was kind of the prototypical thing where it was very obvious, like, oh, the lizards and the bugs, the cold-hearted, emotionless animals are all evil, and the warm-blooded cat and dog type alien robots are all good. Um, but the other thing that kind of made it interesting too was that there was a reason for them to transform in the show, because the planet they were on is so rich in energon, the thing that basically powers them, powers their sparks, powers their ships, or that I think their sparks are made out of it or something like that, because it looks very similar. But it's basically their power source. Like it's how they're able to do things, is to use energon. And the planet is so rich with it that it actually fucks with their electronics, with like their actual physical bodies, unless they're in a shielded form, which is their animal form. So they can only stay transformed for so long, which is, again, it gives them a reason to have that other form where they don't need to blend in with anything, and it gives them a reason to have that kind of originality with the way that they go about it. Now, I will say the animation for the show hasn't aged all that well, but these two factions crash land on this planet that's very primitive. It has cavemen or ape-like things on it, a lot of regular fauna, and you find out later on that it's actually Earth, but very, very far in the past. But basically, these two ships crash land. One has Megatron and his Predacons, and the other one has Optimus Primal, because he is a gorilla, because I guess they decided that was a fun little joke. And he leads the Maximals, and basically it's about them kind of skirmishing over the years, but also trying to find a way to get off the planet. And I think you could work that out really well. The only problem that I would have in it is that you can't squeeze that into one film. You can't try and cut it down and squeeze it into one film. I would have a very serious problem with that, because there's way too much story there for you to pull from. It would have to be a series of films. Um, and even at that, I think it could. There's enough material there for another 5 Transformers movies if you really wanted to do it, and if depending on how many of the characters you actually want to go into. Now, the only concerns that I do have for this is that Paramount won't take the time necessary in order to make this a good film, and because of those Michael Bay films, a lot of audiences still have a bad taste in their mouth. I think that's why Bumblebee did not do as well as maybe it should have. But going forward, I think these are going to do better the more good films you have under your belt. So I think I don't know which one is going to be coming first. Reportedly, Beast Wars has actually, I guess, been or that film that is supposed to people think is going to be Beast Wars, has been in the writing process for I think roughly around 6 to 10 months. So they've actually been fine tuning that script a fair amount, and they haven't switched off script writers and stuff like that. They haven't been doing any of that bullshit. But so it's been a consistent writing process, which is good. But aside from that, I'd be very curious to see who the director is that they get for this film. I assume the Bumblebee sequel will probably have the original director coming back. I would guess that they probably signed him on for multiple films. Um, but I'd be really curious to see who the Beast Wars director is going to be. Because again, I feel like they're going to go. There's a lot of directors and stuff that have been snatched up by Marvel and Warner Brothers and stuff like that. So I'd be very curious to see who they actually get. But it has to be somebody that can handle a larger budget, and it has to be somebody that knows how to handle kind of these larger ensemble type pieces. A lot like an Avengers or a Justice League type of film, because you have so many moving parts with this. And in order to make it work, you kind of have to do that. And I kind of like the fact that a lot of the characters in the show were very different from one another. It wasn't just like, oh, hello there, generic hero. Oh, hi there, generic hero. It wasn't like that. It was, Rat Trap was kind of this skeevy little underhanded guy. He was a good dude, but he was kind of a dick. You had Optimus Prime, Optimus Primal, who of course everybody knows he's Optimus. Um, Rhinox, who was the strong silent time Cheetor's, the pretty boy. And then you had the other side too. You had some of the ones. I think Wasp might have been the mentally challenged one. Um, but there's a lot going on there. So uh, I would be very curious to see who they get. I would be very curious to see how faithful they plan on being to the television show, because I would really like to see that, and I really, 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 really hope that they don't ruin this with human characters, because again, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people really love the show, is because the human characters were absent, and there was a reason why they were absent, and it made the robots that much more human and work that much better. Um, but I want to know what you think. Are you excited for any future Transformers movies, either a Beast Wars adaptation or a Bumblebee 2, or maybe a film that I didn't list here, something that you'd just like to see? If you would, please put any of those thoughts down below. Again, I like your comments. I like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?